Do you find tons of drugs in Valeria Márquez's hairdresser? Omar Garcia Harfuch, the owner of the Mexican City's Secretary of Civil Security, is offering a press conference to talk about an important document. Let's listen. Far from what everyone thought, something that no one imagined, but the evidence is irrefutable. Valeria Márquez worked hand in hand with Ricardo N., helping him to launder millions of dollars and even store merchandise. But how is this possible? Why did Valeria do this? Stay until the end of the video and find out. Right now, we estimate that it is more than 1.5 tons. These jobs are always coordinated. We have a permanent intelligence table with the Secretary of National Defense, with the Secretary of the Navy. After receiving a series of cross-reports between the General Prosecutor's Office of the Republic and the Financial Intelligence Unit, the Secretary of Civil Security and Protection moved with a special team to Zapopan, Jalisco, with a clear objective: to thoroughly inspect the influencer's beauty salon. The information obtained by cybernetic units and testimonies of protected witnesses suggested that the place could have been nothing more than a simple space for makeup and extensions. The search warrant was issued in record time and executed in total secrecy during the early hours of Friday. At 3:14 a.m., a convoy of 6 tactical units arrived at the premises of the establishment, located in a mixed area of commercial premises and homes. The surroundings were secured, without the neighbors noticing any major movements. Together with the agents, there were 2 canine units specialized in the detection of narcotics and paper money, which already indicated the type of operation that had been proposed from the beginning. Upon entering the premises, the agents began the methodical inspection of the site. They inspected the furniture, compartments, warehouses, and electrical appliances. Everything seemed to be in order. There were no obvious signs of crime. The room was clean, tidy, with traces of what had been its last transmission. A light hoop, an empty chair, and makeup still scattered on the table. During the first 30 minutes, the tension grew on the faces of the agents. Nothing indicated that this place was hiding a criminal network. But then, one of the dogs began to bark insistently. He did it in front of a back door, half hidden by a mobile mirror. At first glance, it looked like a smaller warehouse, a warehouse for cleaning items. But when the agents tried to open it, they discovered that it was closed with an industrial lock from the inside. Harfuch, present at the site, ordered to knock it down. It took more than 20 minutes to break the force lock. What they found on the other side not only changed the narrative of the case, but opened a new line of investigation that, until then, no one had considered. Inside the hidden room, more than 2 tons of illegal substances, cocaine, methamphetamines, fentanyl packages, and perfectly organized design tablets were stored in special shelves and refrigerators. There were boxes with altered logos of cosmetic products, used as camouflage. Everything was packed with surgical precision, as if the place worked as a logistics distribution center, not just as a warehouse. But the most revealing thing was not the drugs, it was the documents. Inside a file hidden in a double-deck furniture, the agents found route sheets, receipts, bank statements, and cash deposit records with recent dates. Among the papers were millionaire transfers of ghost accounts to international suppliers of beauty supplies, as well as invoices issued by the clinic on behalf of non-existent people. Everything pointed to a perfectly articulated money laundering structure, and in the center of it, the name of Valeria Márquez. The documents crossed with federal databases revealed that at least 8.4 million pesos in cash would have been entered into the financial system through her business, using as a front-page promotions, courses, and sale of high-end aesthetic products. The money, according to financial analysts, came directly from networks linked to the Ricardo N. Group, aka the WR, considered one of the main financial operators of the Jalisco cartel Nueva Generation. Harfuch, visibly upset during the review, asked for an emergency meeting with his intelligence team. The narrative changed. This is no longer just a case of violence against a woman. This is a criminal operation disguised as a business, and we're going to get to the last responsible, he stated in unofficial statements. The evidence found, both physical and digital, confirms that Valeria, far from being a random victim, would have been a key piece in the network of money laundering of the CGNG in Jalisco, using her media influence and her image as a young entrepreneur to cover an international scale operation. It is presumed that the connection with Ricardo N. would have started with gifts and promises, but would have evolved into a formal financial bond in which she was, at least legally, the visible head. Authorities are still investigating if Valeria collaborated under coercion or if she was an active and voluntary part of the scheme. However, some details found on her devices point to the fact that she feared for her life and that in recent weeks she would have tried to cut ties with the criminal group. An email draftsman never sent contained the phrase, "But why would a girl like her have done that? Why get into such a dangerous world?" Prosecutors and the Financial Intelligence Unit have confirmed that Valeria suffered a severe economic collapse in the last 8 months before being murdered. Her TikTok account, which was once her bastion of growth and advertising, had been banned for a long time. It was the subject of massive reports that ended up restricting her visibility. A couple of controversial posts, unfounded accusations of inappropriate content, and a streak of brand cancellations due to external pressures drastically reduced her reach. What followed was a dizzying decline. Brands stopped writing, collaborations were diluted, and invoices kept coming. The rent of the place, the remodeling, the aesthetic products she had bought on credit, everything began to accumulate like a silent mountain. According to documents found on her personal computer, Valeria owed about $420,000 between cards, loans, and suppliers. And the pressure was not only financial, the emotional one was also heavy. "I try so hard, and no one reaches me," she wrote in a notepad, never published. "I don't know if I'm worth as much as people think." In that context of vulnerability, he appeared Ricardo N., aka WR, a name that in the security circles weighs like lead, but at that moment, he came to her under another mask. It was not the narco who knocked on his door. It was the businessman, the investor, the protector. He introduced himself as a businessman interested in expanding cosmetic brands, someone who was looking for young talents to position them in networks. And desperate Valeria heard him. The initial conversations were not different from those he had with any possible sponsor. They talked about aesthetics, campaigns, collaborations. But soon the speech changed. Ricardo N. offered him a total way out, cover his debts, finance the expansion of his clinic, give him the car he dreamed of so much. Instead, he had to allow certain transactions to go through his business, a favor between friends, an opportunity, only numbers on a computer. He would have said, "Bank records and statements of protected witnesses confirm that the first laundry operations were made in cash, through payments for VIP aesthetic services in fictitious names." Dirty money entered the system with legal invoices issued from his business account. And so the network began. What started as a favor, like a financial lifesaver, quickly turned into a gold trap. Valeria at first thought he had control. He thought he could handle it, that it was a temporary thing, that as long as no one was hurt, nothing happened. But the money arrived quickly, and with it the dependence. In 2 months he had paid off almost all his debts. In 4 he had remodeled the place, bought a new equipment, and even hired staff. His account grew again, his followers returned, and the brands began to knock on the door again. No one knew that behind that rebirth, there were stained bills and dangerous promises. What the investigations show now is that this labor relationship intensified over time. Ricardo N. not only used his living room as a facade, he also asked him to cover physical movements, packages disguised as beauty supplies that were delivered to third parties, private meetings in the place during closed hours, and even video recordings for networks that serve as a curtain for transfers. Valeria did not always understand all the details, but she knew that something was wrong. In chats rescued from her phone, a close friend writes to her, "I don't want to do this anymore, but if I go out, I'm going to get worse." And she was right. Because when she tried to leave, when she asked for a break and refused to continue signing certain documents, subtle threats began. First, a client who never existed came to the place to record her for no reason. Then, a date with a supplier was mysteriously canceled minutes before she arrived at the place. Later, a car with polarized windows parked in front of her house for 3 consecutive nights. And in the last message her sister sent, she read, "I'm already tired. I don't want to live in fear." That was the last weekend she lived. But was Valeria the only one involved? Or was it just one more piece in a big puzzle? In the weeks following the operation in Zapopan, a joint group of the UIF Financial Agency, the General Prosecutor's Office of the Republic, and the SSBC, under the direct supervision of Omar Garcia Harfuch, activated what has been called Operation Pink Code, a digital and accounting sweep to track businesses with patterns similar to that of Valeria's clinic. The criteria were simple: micro businesses with income disproportionate to their actual volume, tax homes with little or no physical activity, and headlines with a prominent presence on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. The result was chilling. In just 3 weeks, they detected 28 micro businesses in the state of Jalisco under direct suspicion of being facades for illicit operations. The turns were varied, from barbershops with urban aesthetics to boutiques of imported clothing, nail studios, coffee shops with personal brand, digital marketing agencies, supplement stores, or image advice services. They all had something in common: a young entrepreneurship, an impeccable aesthetic on social networks, hundreds or thousands of followers, and a promise of personal success without intermediaries. However, behind that modern varnish, financial transactions said something else. One of the clearest clues was the tracking of cash flows in dollars and pesos that entered and left these micro businesses regularly, but without a logical correlation with real sales. In many cases, the invoices issued were directed to ghost companies. In others, the income was shot suddenly for 1 or 2 days and then completely dropped. A typical pattern of pitufio, the technique used to enter large amounts of money into the financial system in a fragmented and less visible way. Some businesses registered up to 400,000 pesos a month in supposed commercial services without even having enough staff or clients. Others reported online sales that did not coincide with the comments or real interactions of their platforms. The obvious could no longer be denied. A parallel network was operating within the entrepreneurial fabric of Jalisco, camouflaged with hashtags, filters, and online promotions. But not everything was digital. In at least 6 of these companies, when scams were carried out, hidden compartments were found, improvised vaults, and in the center of Guadalajara, operated by a 27-year-old young man with more than 60,000 followers on TikTok, 34 kilos of pressed cocaine were found, wrapped with labels of a supposed clothing brand. In another case, a minimalist design cafeteria located in Tlaquepaque and run by 2 influencers worked as a meeting point for financial operators of the CJNG, where cash payments were made disguised as digital advisory services. Interviews with some of the detainees were even more disturbing. Many of them came in by necessity, just like Valeria. Repeated stories of truncated projects, of debts they could not pay, of dreams that deflated in an increasingly demanding economy with fewer opportunities. The narco no longer arrived with rifles or threats, but with proposals. Fast money, without questions, in exchange for lending an account, issuing invoices, receiving a package, and leaving. And when they wanted to leave, there was no way. One of the most shocking testimonies was that of a 25-year-old young woman who ran a boutique in Zapopan with more than 80,000 followers on Instagram. Upon being arrested, she confessed with tears that she had been contacted by a man who introduced himself as a luxury product promoter. He offered her merchandise, money to invest, and help to position herself. When she began to ask more, he told her to shut up. And when she accepted, she was already inside. She did not know how to get out. She repeated over and over again. Her business was part of the network. Her income was fictitious. And she knew it. The authorities have begun to catalog this phenomenon as a new phase of the Mexican narco, the crime of a friendly face, of a digital voice, of a millennial facade. It is no longer just about controlling the border. Social networks, turned into success showcases, have also become the new battlefield where the appearance and power are at stake. And the narco understood it before anyone else. And now what would the Attorney General do? What would they do from now on? Omar Garcia Harfuch announced this Monday at a press conference a direct offensive against influencers and content creators who present irregular financial movements or who are allegedly linked to criminal activities, particularly money laundering linked to drug trafficking. No matter if they have 1 million followers or a single viral video, if they're helping to launder money from organized crime, we're going to treat them as they are criminals, and we're going to go after them wherever they are. Harfuch declared from the National Palace in a press conference that generated an immediate stir both in the media and on digital platforms. It was carried out in full live transmission in Zapopan, Jalisco, and whose beauty salon was found days later with more than 2 tons of drugs and documents that revealed his alleged participation in a capital laundering network for the Jalisco cartel Nueva Generation. It is no longer just about narcos hidden in the mountains. Today, organized crime dresses up as entrepreneurship, disguises itself as digital success, moves in networks, and looks like luxury. But behind that facade, there is dirty money, illicit operations, and criminal complicity, the secretary sentenced. Harfuch detailed that, following the death of Márquez, the Financial Intelligence Unit UEF and the FGR detected at least 28 micro-companies in Jalisco with similar patterns. Businesses run by young people between 20 and 30 years old, with a strong presence on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, but with inconsistent money flows with their real activities. We have names, accounts, false contracts, and proof of million-dollar transactions without justification. It is a surgical operation against those who have believed they can hide behind a cell phone and a smile. It's over. The federal official confirmed that a special unit will be created within the SSBC, in coordination with the SAT and the UIF, to monitor accounts on social networks with suspicious movements and operations outside the normal tax parameters. In addition, a citizen complaint channel will be established to report irregular activities without the need to reveal the identity of those involved. We are not going to criminalize those who do work honestly, Harfuch clarified. But if an account reports income of 500,000 pesos a month and sells self-motivation courses without content or registered assistance, it is evident that they are covering something else. The secretary also mentioned that conversations have been initiated with technological platforms like TikTok, Meta, Instagram, and YouTube in order to establish cooperation protocols to detect financial irregularities and to monitor the situation. While some influencers defended their work and demanded to avoid generalizations, others began to delete content, close accounts, and move assets outside the country, according to preliminary reports leaked by sources within the UF. President Claudia Sheinbaum backed the initiative in a message posted a few hours later. Impunity cannot find refuge on social networks. Organized crime has mutated, and so has the Mexican state, according to Harfuch's secretary. According to the SSBC, audits have already begun for more than 70 accounts with income higher than 1 million pesos a year without demonstrable business activity. The first arrest warrants could be executed in the next few days. National security experts have described this offensive as the first great war against digital narco, a stage in which crime is not only fought in the fields of Amapola or in the maritime ports, but also in the areas of aesthetics and profiles with aesthetic filters. Money laundering has found its new home on social networks, says a researcher at the UIF. It is no longer about big banks or exchange houses. Today, cash enters through fictitious promotions, ghost collaborations, and advertising campaigns invented, and that must end. Harfuch closed the conference with a forceful message. Crime no longer has the face of the hitman, and those who want to protect are deeply wrong, because crime, even if it comes with likes, is still crime, and we will not forgive anyone.